Good evening and welcome. We'll just hang on one more minute. I know we have somebody else coming into the room, so. Okay. Well, welcome everyone. I'm thrilled that you could join us for our Career Outlook session for the Wisconsin Idea Principal Preparation Program. Tonight, I will walk through what our program offers, as well as career pathways available to school leaders in Wisconsin and how ultimately the Wisconsin Idea Principal Program can support those goals. Before we get started though, I am Tina Salzman. I am a clinical professor in ELPA and director of the Wisconsin Idea Principal Prep Program, also referred to affectionately as the WIP. I come to this role as a past public servant. I served as a high school English teacher and then school level administrator in a couple of different districts. I did a little bit of time at the district office before returning to the building, and then transitioned into this position. I am also a proud product of ELPA's executive PhD program. So let's start. One of the things that I would highlight and as a strength is that our program is situated within a world-class institution, not only as the Wisconsin or University of Wisconsin-Madison, but our School of Education is ranked #1 among graduate schools of education in the United States. Additionally, important to point out that the Wisconsin Idea Principal Prep Program, again, is the #2 ranked online master's program in educational administration. And of course, we are housed within the #4 Educational Administration Department, again, according to national rankings. And of course, goes without saying that the University of Wisconsin-Madison is, of course, ranked among the top schools globally. So as part of your Wisconsin experience, you are certainly part of an exceptional academic community and pioneer thinking that is happening across our field. So a brief overview before we jump into some of the specifics as it relates to Career Outlook. Just to remind you, our program is equity focused. That is a strong thread that really connects all of the coursework that you would engage with over the 15 months. This program is delivered fully online. There are no in-person requirements. So that means that during our synchronous scheduled classes, you are logging on to Zoom. And then in between those synchronous classes, there is individual or small group work that you may be engaged in asynchronously. As I mentioned, our program runs 15 months. That is one of the shortest time to degree programs, and in all is roughly 4 semesters. So we start in the summer, so June of 2026 is our next start date, and students, if they follow the laid or prescribed sequence of courses, then you are completing the program by August of the following summer. So that would be June of 2026 to August of 2027. In all, it is a 30 credit program. Our final application deadline is inching closer. We'll accept applications up until April 15th. We do have rolling admissions, so that just simply means our admissions committee does meet monthly. So we will have another meeting in mid-March, and then our final application deadline, our committee will meet shortly after April 15th. And as students sort of think about this program and how it aligns to their career goals, one of the things that I would highlight is that this program is specifically designed for working professionals. Almost all of our students are in one way, shape, or form working in K-12 institutions or related organizations. And we spend considerable time and effort building community very intentionally. And students regularly tell us that that is an important aspect that supports their learning throughout their time in the program. So what does that mean, to ultimately acquire the credentials that ultimately position you for a position in administration? Well, I think one of the places to start is to think about what are the opportunities that sometimes students are interested in pursuing that don't require a license versus those that do require a license. And so you can see on the left, there are a number of career pathways and next steps that students may be exploring that will require you to have a license. And I frequently tell students, your license is what makes you employable and eligible for some of these other positions that you might have your eye on. At the same time, there are a number of really important positions in schools that don't require a license. And oftentimes, these might be positions that our students are stepping into for the first time as they look to take a position outside of the classroom for the first time. So positions like deans of students, sometimes athletic directors, although I will tell you more and more districts are requiring athletic directors to hold an administrative license because they are conducting evaluations, they are handling discipline, etc., all of which require the individual to have an administrative license. Department chairs, right? Might be grade level chair, whatever, terminology you might be using, and similarly instructional coaches. Those generally tend to be positions that are not requiring the administrative license. However, they are oftentimes sort of putting students on that pathway to consider other opportunities that do require a license. And so you can see along the left, any assistant or principal position is going to require a Wisconsin administrator license or the 5051 license. And similarly, if you are an athletic director, particularly some of our larger districts, larger high schools, as I mentioned, they are requiring that additional license. And then as you move through the master's program, your sort of foundational license, if you will, is that principal license. And we do have opportunities for you to add on additional licenses. So oftentimes our students are saying, well, I'm not sure I really want to be a principal, but I am very much interested in the director of instruction, in which case it requires the principal license. Then students can opt to take an additional 2 classes plus a field experience to acquire or quote unquote add on the additional license. And that also holds true for the Director of Special Education and Pupil Services. So what does that look like then? I'm someone who's very much interested in this pathway to, into administration. I'm not sure necessarily what that looks like. Maybe you're thinking, okay, this is the program that I'm really interested in and want to apply to. What does that look like for your graduates? And so let me help make sense of the data on this slide. And so you can see in blue here, as people are starting the program, slightly before, and as they're stepping into the program, the majority of our students are coming to us from the classroom. They're in some sort of teaching position. Roughly 39-ish% of students are in other non-instructional positions. So they might be in counseling positions, they might be in instructional coach positions. And if you're doing the math and saying, but Tina, those numbers don't add up, it's also because we have people who are in split positions. So they might be spending part of their day in the classroom, they might be spending part of their day as an instructional coach. And so you can see, based on the data, this orange line is, okay, so who is actually stepping into administrative positions? And just after graduation, you'll see that our numbers are not yet growing significantly. And that is a pretty frequent trend. But what you should also note then is by the time they are in years 3, 4, and beyond, what we're seeing is that then we have a steep upward climb to where the majority of our graduates are taking positions in some sort of role outside of the classroom. There is, generally speaking, sort of a succession. They're not stepping right into head principal roles, but rather they may be stepping into a coaching role, which then leads into an assistant principal role for a few years before actually assuming a head principal role. So in terms of Wisconsin, you might be interested to know that one of the questions I frequently get is, but how many openings are there? So in a minute, we'll talk about salaries and what does that mean in terms of, overall compensation packages if I am considering stepping into an administrative role. But according to DPI data, between 2009 and 2021, there were over 4,000 instances of principal turnover in Wisconsin. So on average, that generally averages out to about 17.5% of schools in our state annually experience some level of principal turnover. And so that trend has held pretty stable. We did have a dip in our data right around the time of COVID. There was not a lot of movement within the state really in terms of educators, administrators, but we have seen an uptick again now in a post-COVID sort of world. Within those openings, you can kind of get an idea of salary ranges. And I've also included, again, some general averages and numbers as it relates to numbers of positions, just so you have an overall idea. So when we talk about Wisconsin public schools and principals, we're talking roughly about 1,800 positions. And you can see the salary range can be anywhere from mid-80s into the close to 150, depending on, of course, location, size of district, etc. And that same thing follows through for the assistant principal, director of special education, and director of instruction. So in terms of our graduates, again, if I can bring it back to the folks who have successfully completed our program, I've highlighted for you a number of individuals. Allie is a recent graduate. She was an elementary school teacher and graduated in the summer of 2024 and was actually recruited from an administrator within her own district. That administrator was a middle school principal. She knew that Allie was a graduate of our program and had some of the expertise that she was looking for, and so kind of was tapped and strongly recruited. And Allie ended up accepting that job to this day still in that particular role. Similarly, we have a 2022 graduate, Brian. He was a high school teacher up kind of in the greater Green Bay area. And just after graduation, he accepted an assistant principal position in another district. And then just a year later, he was recruited back to the district where he had previously served in the capacity of an assistant principal. Tim is another recent grad from last summer. He very much knew that he wanted to step outside of the classroom. He had made that decision, was ready to do that. And he is now working in one of the larger districts in the state of Wisconsin. And then similarly, Josh was a high school teacher for a number of years and coach. And he is working as an assistant principal in a district in a high school as well. And so all of them really talk about the preparation that this program has built for them in terms of the foundation and giving them or equipping them with the knowledge and skills and dispositions that really they lean into on a daily basis. And I would highlight a couple of important takeaways as you are potentially thinking about stepping outside of the classroom. And a lot of times students will indicate that they really feel as though they're having a profound impact on the students that they serve on a day-to-day basis. And many people will express that they're concerned about losing those really important relationships that they're developing. And I would point you to some of the key literature that is out there that impact on students is second only to an effective classroom teacher when we talk about effective principals. Effective principals have magnitude and this really important thing, scope of impact across an entire school. When students will sometimes, sort of say, I don't want to lose relationships, I guess I try to help them turn that perspective and look at it from a slightly different angle, and that is to say, your school is your classroom. This is an opportunity for you to develop relationships across your building, and effective principals do that. Effective principals positively impact student achievement, attendance, discipline, right? When we talk about scope, we're talking about really all corners of the organization. And lastly, effective principals also positively impact teacher retention and overall teacher job satisfaction. We frequently talk about this in our classes. Teachers don't leave schools, they leave leaders. And so we know that an effective leader has a really positive, profound impact on overall teacher retention, which nowadays is very much a prominent topic and area that we are very attuned to as schools work to address some really important shortages that they are facing in various areas. So what does that mean then when I think about licensing and potentially stepping into or making a career move? Well, one of the first things is to complete an accredited program, which the Wisconsin IDEA Principal Preparation Program is. Candidates also need to have or be eligible to hold a Tier 2 license in teaching or pupil services. So these are DPI requirements. The last one is to have 6 semesters of successful full-time classroom teaching experience or successful experience as a pupil services professional. So what if I am early in my career, I don't yet have 6 semesters? That does not prohibit you from applying to the program. What it does mean is when you go to apply for your administrative license through DPI, you cannot do so until you have successfully acquired those 6 semesters of either classroom or pupil services experience. Once you have that principal license, really you can continue on and complete the additional courses necessary to acquire the Director of Instruction or Director of Special Education. Or sometimes our students will say, I just need a break from graduate school, which is fine too. And we'll have students that come back a year or 2 later then who are looking to enroll to, again, acquire those additional licenses. If you are if that sounds like you, there are 2 additional courses for each license. So 2 for the Director of Instruction, 2 for Special Education. And then each of those licenses requires a 75-hour field experience to basically have your boots on the ground, if you will, working alongside a licensed professional in that particular area. And so in terms of the pacing of this program, I'm definitely interested and wanting to enroll. Your first summer, you carry 9 credits. So the first summer is rigorous. And sometimes that means students are also finding their graduate school legs. For some, it's been a little while since maybe they have been in classes. And that's really my role as the director and as a faculty member, but also, again, part of our attentiveness to building a strong community and helping people to feel connected. After that first summer, students complete 2 courses during the fall and spring of the year. And they're also enrolled in their field experience. This is similar to if you were a student teacher. It's somewhat similar to that in that we have a set of required experiences that you will work alongside a licensed administrator to participate, shadow as you're moving through the rhythm of a school year. Generally, our students are completing the field experience in their building where they're employed. That is not a requirement. We have, I think, 3 students this semester who are in a building outside of where they're employed, and that works too, as long as you can make the logistics work in your schedule. And then the final summer, you have 2 classes. So at the same time, I'm also working with students to prepare and complete the portfolio. So if you are licensed in Wisconsin as a teacher, you're probably familiar with PI 34, and that is a similar requirement in terms of your licensing as an administrator. You are building the artifacts that you will ultimately be using in your portfolio as you are moving through your coursework. So different assignments, papers, group projects, presentations, things that you are completing all the way back to year 1 in your first summer. Those are all pieces that are aligned to your portfolio that you can ultimately draw on and sort of mold into a coherent artifact that you'll submit as your portfolio process. And so if that all sounds like, okay, this is the place where I think that I see myself, it aligns with my ultimate career goals and values that drive me as a public educator and servant, our application process looks like this. There are a few requirements in terms of what students are asked to submit. The first one is an essay statement. No more than 2 pages, and this is our opportunity to really get to know who you are and who you aspire to be as a leader. It's also, quite honestly, a writing sample in terms of the writing that you will do as part of a rigorous graduate program. So time spent editing, proofing, etc., is definitely time well spent. At the same time, your initial application, you can submit your unofficial transcripts. Do not submit your officials. That is only after you've been recommended for admission to the graduate school by the department and by the program, at which point you will be asked to submit your official transcripts. Of course, your resume or CV. And then there's a requirement for 3 letters of recommendation. And these ideally are people who are qualified to speak to your academic and professional competence. I strongly encourage people to have at least 1 letter of recommendation from a supervising administrator or someone who is in a supervisory type of capacity, who can really speak to your leadership potential. And then a couple of last notes. We certainly recognize that sometimes undergraduate GPAs may not reflect your full potential. And so if that is something that maybe you are thinking about as you're looking to apply, you can attach an additional statement explaining why a GPA below 3.0 is not reflective of your full potential. And that is definitely considered. We've had a number of students historically who have not had a strong undergraduate GPA, but who come through our program and really do quite well. And then last but not least, even though I mentioned it, it probably bears mentioning one more time, our last round of admission will be April 15th. That is the final deadline at which we can accept applications and get students all the way through the graduate school process in time to be ready to go in June when classes kick off. And so with that, I am always happy to meet, answer questions, if you prefer a phone call. I realize that people have, personal questions or sometimes, unique positions in terms of their context, things like that they want to talk through, I am more than happy to find a time, mutually agreeable time to chat or have a virtual meeting so that, ultimately you can get the information that you need to make an informed decision about this really important investment, not only in yourself, but also in your career and ultimately your leadership journey. I also have on here the program assistant, Victor Escalona. He has been with me now for almost 5 years, and he is very well versed. If you want to know from a student perspective, he has taken classes within the program. He is currently finishing up his dissertation, but he very much is willing to connect as well. And so with that, I want to say thank you, everyone. And I will stop sharing. And if folks have questions, I would invite you if you're more comfortable.